All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. It's Coram and Ed Carson here. We've got a look at the action in today's session for Wednesday, January 15th, where the stocks and the market are trying to get their mojo back. And here to break it all down with me today is my colleague, Ed Carson. Ed, a nice day in the
Yeah,
market.
definitely a nice day in the market. I want to take a look at three stocks that were flashing buy signals: Intuitive Surgical, Goldman Sachs, and Spotify.
Okay, well, we will take a look at those stocks, but first, we want to analyze, as always, those major indexes. The NASDAQ up almost 2.5% by the close, a very powerful day there, followed by the Russell 2000 up 2% on the day. The S&P 500 was up 1.8%, getting very close to that 50-day line. And then the Dow was up nearly 1.7%. So strength across the board, Ed, really fueled by that inflation data out this morning.
Yeah, tame CPI report. We had core inflation cool a little bit. It was the first time in several months that inflation had actually come down. So really strong. There was a lot of bank earnings. We'll talk about Goldman, but there's a lot of that. Very broad. The mega caps are strong, but lots of breadth. NASDAQ back above the 50-day line, back above the 21-day line. I mean, that's sort of a minimum. This has been the strongest index. What's been even stronger has been the leading stocks. I think that's one thing. We're going to look at these indexes, but one reason why things were still looking hopeful is that even yesterday, there were a lot of stocks flashing buy
Mhm.
signals. It was just that the market was looking, pretty iffy. So today's really is getting, a lot more things are more going into the positive column about this market.
Yeah. And in addition to those key levels that you mentioned, Ed, also some prior highs around 19,400. I think that's notable as well. And you know what? Yesterday on this show, we said, hey, if the NASDAQ can get back above the 50-day line, that could be a signal to look for. And sure enough, that is what happened today. But I will add that we've been in this choppy uh to sideways to down period here over the last month or so we're not totally out of the woods yet, but it is very encouraging to see the kind of bullish action we saw today.
Yeah, I think it's good to caution on that because we're basically back to where we were in the chop up until a few days ago. So maybe we still do that. But yeah, this was probably a day, even though with all that, it probably was a day to be adding some exposure, not
Mhm.
necessarily rushing in, but there were a lot of stocks flashing buy signals. If things don't work out, if things reverse lower, you're probably gonna have to take that out. But there were a lot of signals there. And just to start that, if the market keeps on improving, if the
Right.
market actually, if the Nasdaq gets above 20,000, if the S&P is above the 50-day line, and these other indexes move up, and these stocks are moving, you can keep adding. There wasn't a time to rush in, but definitely a time that you could be, be looking to be making some
Mhm.
buys and preparing for more buys if things work.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think what would really strengthen the case here is if we get a follow up on this strength. I know something Mike Webster, our senior market strategist, likes looking for is the low above the 21 day. So we closed above the 21-day line. Now, can we get the low above that level? Ed, let's also get your thoughts on the S&P 500 and some of the other index ETFs that we like taking a look at.
Yeah, the 50-day did momentarily, by just a fraction, get above the 50-day line at one point during the day. This getting above, that would be a really strong signal, and the 6,000
Mhm.
level, and there's a trend line. So all those things are really boom, 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 and the recent short-term highs there. So you can imagine if you can get above all that, which would probably coincide with the NASDAQ really putting some distance from the 50-day line, that would all be positive. So really strong day. Key resistance right here, right, for the next couple of days, maybe.
And then a number of other indexes look kind of similar. Ed, why don't you walk us through what we're seeing with RSP, QQEW, and some others?
I mean, all these sort of were moving off their 200-day line. They were leading earlier in the week. They didn't lead today necessarily. They're strong, strong days. Basically, every index and all these ETFs, they're all above their 21-day lines. As they say, Webby likes to see things, the close, the low above the 21-day line. But basically, every index and ETF we're looking here, they at least got above their 21-day line. So, really saw some minimum levels. RSP was a long time, and I think the Russell, long time since they'd been above their 21-day line as a close. So it's not everything, but it's something, and a lot of strength today.
Yeah. And it wasn't a perfect day. I think it would have been even more encouraging to see the RSP hold near those highs from earlier on in the session. But hey, we'll take it and we'll see what we get come tomorrow. Also, it makes sense because we have the market so focused on all the economic data. You had the 10-year coming off in a big way today alongside that cooling inflation data.
Yeah, see, the 10-year didn't really move yesterday. We had a tame PPI, but there was details that was not a positive for the CPI, but it turned out things were okay. So we really saw that reaction today, coming off 52-week highs. A big reason why the market is rallying today.
Yeah, I mean, this was the biggest down day, at least visually here in quite a while, Ed. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess maybe you could compare it to what we saw in late November.
Hmm. And that was a good, pretty good time for the market too. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we'll have to see. This is one day. We'll have to see what comes next in the Thursday and Friday sessions. Okay, let's take a look at some standout stocks from today, including Intuitive Surgical. This one had a nice close near highs of the day, up 7.7%, and some really strong volume here. Now, we did get a pre announcement. Earnings are about 8 days away, but the pre announcement fueling the stock today.
Yeah, 25% revenue gain, I believe, is what the preliminary number was. And that's, you can see the acceleration. That'll be the third straight quarter of accelerating growth on the on revenue. That obviously bodes well for earnings. Earnings are coming up, but because they've given this, it does take some of the risk off. The earnings may or may not surprise a little bit, but probably that band is going to be a little bit easier to figure out. Guidance will be important. But not only this, on a weekly chart, there is a flat base, so it rebounded from the 50-day, 10-week line, and it got above this flat base. And because it's a base here, you see the blue dot. There's a lot to like about this one. It's made some fairly quiet bases, found support off the 10-week line. It's been pretty nice action over here, and this has been just a really strong stock for a long time.
Yeah, strong and steady. Next on the list, let's take a look at Goldman Sachs, one of the big banks with earnings out. We've got a couple more bank earnings still to come, but the first batch of them, notable batch out today, including Goldman Sachs, up 6% on the day. And here's another blue dot stock.
Yeah, really strong earnings. I mean, really, really powerful. They're more than doubling. Nice record there. Above the 50-day line, above short-term highs, above a trend line. There's all sorts of reasons why you could have, taken an early entry off of this. Probably the way to go. The RS line, blue dot, huge volume. So there's just it's ticking off a lot of boxes. There's all definitely
Mhm.
banks, people think are going to do well because of deregulation, because of a right, yield curve being positive. So there's a lot of things that were going well. Definitely people should be looking at not just Goldman, maybe other financials to at least consider to have part of your portfolio.
Mhm. Yeah, I've noticed a lot of financial sector stocks popping up on my screens as well. And I think today, quite notable for the sector. Here's a look at the XLF ETF. Of course, you had that huge move right after the election, but it gave a lot of that back, basically almost filled the gap there. So today, moving back above the 50-day line. So we'll have to see if financial stocks can really step into that leadership position once again.
Yeah.
And last but not least, let's check out Spotify, up 5.9% on the day. Full disclosure, I do own this one. And all of these stocks are either on Swing Trader or Leaderboard Ed.
Yeah, all of them are on Swing Trader, and this one is also on Leaderboard. A little bit like Goldman in the sense of bouncing from the 50-day line, clearing a short-term high. There's a trend line. So definitely could have bought this name. Nice action here. Relative strength line really close to highs. It made a big move from the prior base, which sort of base on base, really just made stride after stride, but there's just enormous earnings. This is the year that the stock is turning profitable, at least fully for the year. And it's just a change. It's just like it's basically a software company. I know we think about it's a streaming service, but it's basically software. So almost every
Yeah.
dollar they get in is a dollar in profit at this point. So that really flies higher. You look at that, look on the weekly chart, the volume when it was correcting was pretty light. So I mean, while it wasn't tremendous volume today, you could see there was a huge run up around earnings. Then things pulled back, but not that much, and on light volume. So really nice constructive base that formed here. So definitely one that was actionable, still is actionable going forward.
Mhm.
Earnings are in a few weeks. That's still plenty of time. It's just something that investors should be looking at with a lot of things. There's just almost
Right.
everything seems to be on tap in the next few weeks.
Yeah. Well said. All right. Well, we'll leave it there for today, but more content coming up because it's Wednesday. So we have our weekly podcast. So make sure to tune in live at 5 p.m. Eastern for Justin Nielsen on the Investing with IBD podcast. And this week's guest, David Cox of Raymond James Limited, a Canadian affiliate of Raymond James. So looking forward to that. And Ed, thank you for your time today. We always appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And we will see you tomorrow morning on IBD Live, investors.com/IBD Live for all the details on that. So we'll see you there. And then we'll also see you right back here tomorrow after the close.